here to talk about the future. We're here to talk 10 years ahead. We're here to talk about a future that the Army War College describes as the VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I've been working with the Army War College since 9/11, and I'm convinced the VUCA world's going to get worse, much worse over the next decade. But I'm also convinced that this is a very hopeful time if you take stock of where we're starting. So I'm going to share with you how I see that world playing out over the next decade. The word I use to describe the next decade is the word scramble. And I'm here not just to talk about the scramble, I'm here to talk about how you thrive in the scramble. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you not only to the new book, but to my ghostwriter, Atticus, who is a behind-the-scenes leader, and to the big secret of 10-year forecasting. So at Institute for the Future, we've been doing this for 40-plus years. I think we're the only futures group left in the world now that's actually outlived its forecasts. We're usually right, and the purpose of forecasting isn't to predict, it's to provoke your insights, which I hope this will do. This is our logo, and if you look at it in this frame, it's hard to see that it actually says IFTF for Institute for the Future. It's designed on an Etch-a-Sketch, by the way, the old technology, but if you hold it away, it becomes more clear. That's the secret of 10-year forecasting. It's actually easier to do 10-year forecasts than it is 1 or 2 year forecasts. So I'm always asked, how can you do a 10-year forecast? I can't even do 1 or 2. The reason is because it's easier to look 10 years ahead, and that's what I'm going to share with you. So 10 years ahead, it's obvious that anything that can be distributed will be distributed. And I'll explain to you why. I've got a strong logic for why this is true. This is inevitable. If you look 10 years ahead, anything that can be distributed will be distributed. Secondly, this future, this VUCA world, this scramble, will reward clarity. You want to be very clear where you're going, but very flexible how you get there. Hierarchies and certainty will be punished. So you want clarity, but you do not want certainty. So the new literacies, I'll quickly introduce them to you. The core literacy is looking backward from the future. I find the sweet spot about 10 years out. It's beyond people's normal planning horizon, but close enough in to be practical. But then you've got to pull back. So it's essentially foresight, which is a story from the future, plausible, internally consistent, provocative, and there are signals to be followed to help bring that forecast to life. You know, William Gibson said, the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And those are signals, and I'll be sharing a number of those with you. Then a lot of my current life is doing custom forecasts for CEOs, usually for very large companies. I just finished one for Doug McMillan at Walmart. We're finishing one now for Takeda, the big pharma company. We're focused, again, 10 years ahead at what are the 4 or 5 most likely disruptors for that business. We do that not to predict, but to provoke, and we want to provoke your insight, which is a story, a kind of an aha that pulls together ideas, but once you've had an insight, you can't go back. So we worked with Walt Disney World right after 9/11 doing a future of fun in the theme park at Walt Disney World. And the big insight from that was you have to create a park in the midst of the VUCA world where kids can be safely scared. You know, the parents are concerned about safety. The kids want to be scared. So theme parks are all about creating this collective experience in the midst of all this uncertainty, and yet the kids want to be scared. And that feeds into strategy, and ultimately you want action, a better way to make decisions in the present, ideally expressed with clarity and in a story. The best leaders I know are all great storytellers. So once you have this discipline of foresight, insight, action, you need to immerse yourself in the VUCA world. You need to voluntarily expose yourself to fear. And the good news is in this world of gaming, of video gaming, of interfaces now for video games that are roughly 10 times better than anything we have in offices, even if we use Macs or Surface or whatever office systems we have. Margie Kerr at University of Pittsburgh is my favorite researcher on this. She studies fear. This is her in a haunted house where she does a lot of her research. And it's what she talks about, that voluntary fear builds resilience. And of course, the military knows this much better than we do in business. The kids have a competitive advantage over us in this area. If you grow up with these kind of video games, you'll have the mental dexterity, that ability to experiment, to play, to engage with emotionally laden attention. And it's true many of today's video games are too sexual and too violent, but the medium of gaming is going to become the most powerful medium in history. And there's a few industries. You're a pilot, you know how simulation is used in pilot training. The healthcare people are really good at this, but most business people are not. The future organizations are going to be what I call shape-shifting, and you're going to have to lead them. So imagine your organization chart today. Here's what your organization chart's going to look like in the future. It's going to be much more of a shape-shifting organization. No center, more distributed authority. We'll come back to this, less centralized. Hierarchies will come and go. Liquid hierarchies, my favorite term. Grows from the edges, where diversity flourishes. Can't be controlled, but can be guided. As these structures don't just stay the same, they move all the time. The hierarchies come and go, it grows from the edges. And it's not just a single organization, it's a landscape of organizations that you're going to be dealing with. And the challenge is, the criminals are better at this than we are, especially the terrorist groups. So we're going to have to figure out how to deal with shape-shifting organizations, how to learn from the criminals and apply it to the rest of us. In the military world, these are the special forces. It's not the conventional army, it's the special forces. And the lessons they say is, you want to create a shape-shifting organization, it'll require great clarity where you want to go, great flexibility how you get there. And they have a language for this. They call it commander's intent, mission command, or the latest term, flexive command. So shape-shifting organizations will grow from the edges, and it's at the edges where diversity and innovation thrive. So these distributed organizations will require a different kind of leadership because you can't just be there in person. So most of today's leaders that I know are really good in person, but when they're not there, they degrade. They're not as good. They're not as good through social media. They're not as good through teleconferencing. They're not as good through virtual media. They're just really good in person. In the future world, again, looking 10 years out, it's obvious that leaders and workers will work together through massive webs of sensors, some of which they will wear, and some of which will be embedded in their own bodies or in the bodies of others. Most of the groups I do, I imagine this group, half of you wear Fitbit or Apple Watch or some kind of body sensor. 10 years from now at the CEO Guild, all of you will be wearing body sensors if you want them. Half of you will have embedded body sensors. So that's the good news, is we're going to have better information to make health choices. But there's also a dark side. Ready Player One is the novel that is the vivid story of life in a blended reality world. This book is now given away at Facebook for the new members of the Oculus team to immerse them. And in this futuristic scenario set in 2045, this is what the world will look like. This is 2045 vision of Columbus, Ohio, in what are called the stacks, what's left of the living world. And this generation of young people in this scenario are forced to live completely in a virtual world that's referred to as the oasis. And it gives us a taste, a rather frightening taste, of what it's going to be like to be better than being there. Spielberg has now agreed to do a new movie, and it'll come out in March 2018. So finally, leaders will have to create and sustain positive energy. Leaders will need to be physically, mentally, and even spiritually, although not necessarily religiously, spiritually fit to thrive in this VUCA world. So just a quick test for yourself. When I walk into a room, I radiate positive energy. So just think about that for a moment. Is that true of you? I have a disciplined approach to my own physical, mental, spiritual, not necessarily religious fitness. In the face of my daily work and life pressures, I balance my personal energy throughout the day. So nutrition is becoming so important in this world. We shouldn't have extreme peaks and droops. That's just not necessary anymore. And finally, you need to create the space for others to do this too. So here are the literacies, and then we'll open it up. Looking back from the future, but acting now. Voluntary fear engagement. Leadership for shape-shifting organizations. Being there without being there. And creating and sustaining positive energy. And through all of this, we all have to understand that clarity will be rewarded. We have to be very clear where we're going, but very flexible how we get there. But certainty, especially hierarchical certainty, certainty will be punished. So that's the story. Those are the literacies. And I'm here to coach, guide, and learn from you.